Welcome back to The Line. This week, the Albuquerque Journal looked at how New Mexico's economy fares compared to the years before the Great Recession. Now, New Mexico has the highest unemployment rate in the nation, as you might know, and we continue to end up at the bottom of many other rankings for the health of our economy. And Sophie, do you notice what Albuquerque Journal highlighted, a real shift in the New Mexico economy that may be perhaps a new normal, perhaps permanent? I hate to use that word, but are we starting to get a sense now of what this could mean for our economy?
I think it's only a new normal if our state government continues to think that it's okay to keep cutting jobs. I mean, some of the most recent word out of the governor's office is we're going to cut infrastructure projects. Right. Going beyond hiring freezes to furloughs. I think, unfortunately, I think that New Mexico made the decision to put itself in this place, and that other states did not make that decision as part of the reason that they've recovered. We've got a lot going for us as a state, but with the unemployment that we see and with our history of government employment,
that's right.
And in better times, that has definitely sort of helped to carry us over. I think that that's a real concern. The other thing I'm concerned about, frankly, is that as we move away from extractive industries, because they're not as profitable as they once were, if we're not investing in renewable resources, solar, wind, et cetera, those are our big growth areas, and,
that's right.
and that would be very short-sighted.
Tom, I mean, I know this is an issue that when you come to the table on weeks like this, it concerns you greatly, this amount of job loss and such. It's really staggering to think about. We are at job levels lower than at 2007, where we went into the recession, and we're just not reclaimed anything at this point. Talk about that, because business runs on momentum. You got to have momentum to get things going.
Yeah, momentum is key, and New Mexico has no momentum.
That's right.
Looking at all the numbers, and I think the Albuquerque Journal, Santa Fe, New Mexico have done a great job in really kind of vetting this whole issue. But New Mexico's workforce is one of the best in the country. The only problem is that New Mexico's workforce is in Colorado, it's in Utah, it's in Arizona, it's in Texas, and while these states have like a 2.6 unemployment rate in Colorado, New Mexico has never even since post-recession gotten close to passing 6.4%.
That's right.
So I think from a business perspective, when you talk about momentum, it scares the daylights out of me, because there is a new normal, there is a new shift that's taking place. Jim Peach down at New Mexico State University is spot on when he's saying something has happened to the economy and we are not the same.
That's right.
And so and that really impacts when companies look to relocate and or to expand.
That's right.
I do want to say that Matt Geisel has done a great job. I think he's the right guy for the job. He was just in there 6 years too late. So, he's got that private sector mentality, and he's really helping to grow a lot of small businesses. And unfortunately, I think that's what our future is. I don't say unfortunately, because we need a whole lot more of small business.
That's right.
Good for the small businesses and on the entrepreneurial mindset.
That's right. That's right. Christine, it was interesting that tension Tom's talking about in that article between we have a faction that wants to bring in the big 300 to 400, 500 seat jobs, and we need that for sure. But the idea, as Tom just mentioned, you have to nurture your home folks a little bit more. And one of the things that came up in the article that really kind of rang my bell was the quote that we don't make things here that people around the world want to buy. That is the fundamental problem here. We don't make anything. We do defense, we do things, that's very important to the country, but we're not in that swirl, that economic swirl of making things and selling things. Does that make sense to you when you hear stuff like that?
I think maybe that's a bit exaggerated. I think that we could encourage the development more of our IT expertise. We could encourage more. We're certainly making beer, and we're having a whole, new development of microbreweries.
Right. And
some folks that I know from UNM were thinking that raising barley in some of our agricultural areas might be a good way to help in especially some of those northern New Mexico communities. So I thought that the state auditor's report, which looked at the way in which state and local governments do, in the end, outsource so much of what they need to know, that rather than relying on the expertise of New Mexico firms and New Mexico businesses and entities, that we outsource this. So I think we've got to just redevelop some strategies for economic development that aren't outrageously outside of our reach. I think that there are a lot of things that we could do, and encouraging the growth at home.
That's right. Dan, Christine picked up on something that's a sore spot for a lot of people here, and this is the letting out of contracts out of state. In the article she referenced, there's a huge amount of IT contracts in the state that are going out. Over 80%, as a matter of fact. And I remember in the last mayoral debate, right here in this room, in the corner, right over there, we had the 3 mayoral candidates. I put the question to them about letting city contracts out. Everybody was like, well, there's really nothing you can do about it. It's just sort of the system. This bugs people a lot here, because companies can't grow. They can't get their chops honed by not getting these kind of contracts. Does that make sense to you?
Oh,
Is that part of the solution here for us?
I mean,
Spend money
I'm
on
involved with the
ourselves?
business. Yeah, I get it. I mean, I think it's foolish to not give someone the contract within your community, within your region, within your state that has the qualifications and has the ability to do the job. And it's happening all the time. I mean, and it's happening with some of our biggest entities, whether they're colleges, the universities, that, there's people that can do IT, HR, you name insurance, go through the list, law stuff. And you know what? They don't have someone. They're out getting someone out of Denver, Dallas. But I think
Is it the notion that people are smarter than us? I mean, why
no,
does this
but
happen?
I think the
don't
problem
understand.
stems from kind of to Sophie and everybody's point is that, when we talk about the states around us, Texas and Arizona and Colorado, that are growing, well, they're not growing because the government's paying for jobs. They're growing because they've spent a long time building the private sector that was ready. And we've talked about this at the table before. I think that New Mexico has been so dependent on the government dollar, whether it came from the feds or state jobs or local governmental jobs, that when the government started to crater, when we cratered, and not just the state, the feds, and on top of that, you add the fact that, and again, I'm not attacking Martin Heinrich or Tom Udall. We lost the 2 most senior guys we had in the U.S. Senate, and we replaced them with junior guys. Doesn't matter what party you're in. It's all about seniority. All of that money that was coming for labs disappears. And Gene, you and I talked about this when you worked for Congresswoman Wilson, and you were doing economic development stuff, and we talked about this 20 years ago, that if we don't stop just sitting here waiting for the government to give us money and jobs, we're never going to be positioned. We're now at a place where the government has turned off the spigot and we don't know what to do. And while states around us took that opportunity to invest in what they can do to grow, they've done it. We're failing, I think, also as a state outside of that because, you look at places like Colorado where they've got unbelievable incubator programs. We've talked about this on the program. In Boulder, where they're going to keep a business till it gets a certain size and they boot it out. Why are we not sitting in Boulder in a big shop saying, hey, listen, in Albuquerque, we don't want any startup that's under 300 people. So once you get to 300, come on down the street 6 hours, we'll take care of you.
That's right.
We're not doing that. And we have as much to offer as Colorado does. There's no difference between the state of Colorado and us other than they got some stuff legalized that I think drives people to go up there. They have something they can export that people want.
That's right. So for Albuquerque Business Force, I'm talking $40 million out of $48 million in state IT contracts. 40 out of 48 million. That's not balance. That's so far out of balance. It literally begs for a look at
But
this.
you raises the question: what has been done up till now? And I do believe that there are programs that are gearing up, that are getting ready to sort of help address these issues. But what has been done in the past to address the qualifications issue, and I think probably also the volume, the economy of scale issue. If a company comes in from Texas, comes in from California, comes in from another state and says, we can provide these additional qualifications, we are a better match, and we will do it for less, there comes a point at which the state has to decide, do we in fact spend the money locally and not get exactly what we want? And this is not really me arguing for outsourcing.
Sure.
Instead, it's where have we invested here in our universities, in our technical schools, in our, for that matter, in early childhood education, in pre-K, but also in our elementary and high schools. Where have we invested here in order to make it possible for a company to grow up in New Mexico and reach the point where they can compete head to head on price, on quality, et cetera? Not in any way running down the companies that are here. We just don't have this tremendous volume.
And let's start talking about the crime that is. I mean, our growth in crime.
Has to be
I mean,
factored.
things
Has
that
to be
people,
factored.
we talked to Tom, and Tom knows he does this stuff. You talk to businesses that want to relocate here, and when someone tells you that it's safer to live in Dallas than it is Albuquerque, you got to question. When someone says, hey, the murder rate in the state of New Mexico, or the death by drugs and alcohol, or your testing scores in your educational system is far worse than it is in Denver. I mean, you know, we've talked about this before. We keep talking about it. We have an unbelievably large problem, and we're doing nothing to take the first steps to
I
fix
hear
it.
that. When we return to the line, we'll talk about Real ID compliance.